Welcome to TradeTheNBI.com. This is John. This report is for the 2nd of May. And in just a boring start to the month, not a completely unexpected where we're at the peaks. We started to see a little bit of weakness from the intraday charts as things were heading off, and then sure enough, boom, a little bit of a DOC spread. That's exactly what we were talking about. We had seen this a little bit of a trail off. But converse to that, we also have the fact that it's complete reset. Steel has now started the pre-market here above the -13, and you still have a fade of midterm buyers as well as increase in shorts. So then we came right down to, well, we didn't hit the ABM green, but we got pretty close to the 76% line, which down at 2905. So a little bit off from there. Not unexpected here. We've had this little bit of softness trail off, but overall, still healthy. We're not complaining about it. It's just a normal pullback fill-in. Actually, let me put up the 50K while we're at it, because we did have the re-entry from the Opus, and it just went ahead and took the break-even setup with it because it just lost its oomph. And not surprising, we knew that that was going to happen as we started to get into breaking into new territory. Like the NQ we were talking about just the other day was far weaker from its setup because it was getting much closer to this conversion, though. Doesn't have a complete DOC spread with the cyan over, and like I was talking about before, with that move of the steel from under the -13.5, if it stays there, that can create a little bit more of a downdraft. And it certainly had, positive extremes going all the way back here. Though, I mean, from my standpoint, I think they're all pretty much filled. It's the ones that aren't filled. Go back to the start of the breakout, which is all the way back down here at 74. And some people might consider that a huge retrace if it happens. Hasn't quite taken place yet. So we were looking for the euro to pump back up to that 50%, came just below it, and then boom, gave it all back. And not a surprise, though it's a huge improvement from a shakeout standpoint, right at the 23%, complete with the steel reset. So from that standpoint, there is the potential for what I'm looking for. Likely is the little pop here, comes back, retests, and then builds up some momentum to see if it can break through. It's at a critical spot, because once you break the shakeout to the positive, you better hold it, because if you don't, it's going to get much more severe on a move to the downside. And gold couldn't hold out, little pop, and actually even had the cyan break back above it. So it's like a miniature spike. It's not even a healthy one. Usually you get a nice spike of green above cyan, and then it comes back down. In this case, it barely even made it over it. And you've had short-term buyers resetting all the way through this whole setup there. Not too shocking from that standpoint. So we started off with the strong momentum, made new highs, and then we ended up with our little DOC spread, faded back a little bit, went past 50%, which I was actually a little surprised at that early. It was kind of a warning as to what was coming, and then we ended up with another pop above 50 that just literally rolled right over. Full DOC spread went into it right there. And I was looking at that when then the steel crossed right here, first warning sign that we might get a turnaround, and that caused me to be a little more cautious with it, but nothing happened. And then we ended up with the dip below the red line with the extremes all throughout here, which meant that even though this was likely to pop, we were going to retest the lows. What was interesting about it is it gave a pretty strong one. I mean, to go all the way from the 0 to the 100% before coming back and retesting the low. They do their best to fool as much as they can, but sure enough, that also put in a similar one, and then it actually gave a little warning signal right here on the cross a little earlier, but was so far away from orange and cyan that by the time you get to a cross buy, which right here, you'd already get the full signal, and it wasn't enough to be a sustainable run, but it made it all the way back to its 50% before cascading. And then this is always an interesting one, and I'm working with the details of this, where you get the signal for crossover. Everything's exactly what you're looking for, and then boom, next bar, rollover. It's the one setup that kind of drives me nuts because it doesn't happen all that often. I mean, in this case, we had lower peaks, but it gives you just what you're looking for. You're about to break it, and then it just rolls right over from a shakeout standpoint. Literally, as you get the crossovers that you're looking at, you have one bar that starts to get clean. In this particular case, the blue bar showed already with a lower shakeout reading, so I wasn't fooled by that one. And then, of course, it started to break down significantly once it made the new lows, and then that just cascaded lower. We're just entering a new area with the X2s. Literally could have taken advantage of this one once you had the nice cross right here. Was an indication that this one would do pretty decent going forward because you were still below the negative 13. I don't want to change anything. Still below the negative 13 on the histogram. At the same time, you have a greater than 2.5 point spread. If we look at the numbers between the two, I don't know if I can get it to where it'll show up. But it was 26 to 29, so it's 3 full points, and you're still below the negative 13. Those tend to have a little bit more range, and in this case, up to the 38. I usually look for those to make to the 50, and I think that high was just shy of that on this pre-market move. But still should go there. 29 to 30 was the high, and 50% was 31, so it's pretty close. But all in all, love the way that's looking. If we go and look at the Gamma function paper, a little bit cleaner from that representation as I continue to make the adjustments on the Diokon Paint 2, but capturing it right from that description right here in the blue, and then making the run. And then turn actually gold, because it is a rise of gold right there. So the potential for this to have a little bit more is there if it doesn't keep producing weakness off this DOC spread. You just have rising red at this particular point is the only strength support element to it right now. So that's got to hold up with continually rising shakeouts, or we'll probably retest like a couple of positive extremes right from the secondary of the breakout, which puts us right back at 29.20. So I think all in all, a healthy move, decent range. Love that going from 50 down to 15. So the increase in volatility, just as I was talking about, it starts to happen. And I think that extra range really is something that will be, I think, healthier, because it really helps identify where support resistances are, and becomes much cleaner from a trade standpoint for us to be able to really capture some decent runs. As always, though, I will put up details as they come available, and we'll talk again later. Trade well.